live in the studios of The Current, touring in support of her latest release, Native Invader, and performing at O'Shaughnessy Auditorium to kick off the North American leg of the tour in support. Here at Oak and Riley in the Morning, we're very glad to be joined by Tori Amos. Hello, Tori.
Hi, thanks for having me, Brian and Jill.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's nice to have you back and seeing you sit at this beautiful Steinway that we have here at Minnesota Public Radio. You know, as I was listening to you perform that song, Baker, Baker, just thinking about musicians who tour around the world, you know, a guitar player, for example, they always have their own guitar, but now piano player, you are always playing a different piano all the time. So do you have any sort of way of, I guess maybe introducing yourself to the instrument as you sit down?
Well, she's not a new friend. I've played the Steinway several times. So every time I come here, it's a bit catching up with an old girlfriend. When I travel with the Busendorfer, and I've been playing that one since 1994.
Wow.
So she travels around. She has her own case and blanket. She's looked after quite well, and I'm sure the Steinway's looked after very well.
Since 1994, the year that the record Under the Pink came out, of course, where that song comes from. And why did you choose to play that song today for us?
I'm not quite sure, but the funny thing is when I got in the car, Izzy, who was driving us, who's been driving me when I come to town for years and drives a lot of musicians who would work for Jimmy Jam and Terry back in the day, and he had these beautiful caramel rolls from Highland Cafe in St. Paul that he's telling me, you have to call ahead because they're so good that they go. So that's my treat today.
And that's where Baker Baker came from.
Well, today.
Okay, very good. Are they all at your disposal? I mean, obviously your songs you've written, but you've been making music for a long time. If you decide on a whim to pull something out, say, at a show, I mean, are they all still right there in your head?
Well, lyrics are tricky, and when you're playing in different settings, so if you're with a band or an orchestra or I'm on my own, I have to rearrange them. So if I pull it out, I just rearrange it on the spot. But the thing is, the songs are there to be utilized as part of the storytelling. So you pull them out. I mean, the crew has a joke. They have a set list, usually minutes before I walk out because it doesn't get finalized till the last half hour. And some of them will just look, my husband in particular will say, I don't know if this is really going to help me at all tonight, wife.
We're talking with Tori Amos here on The Current. And we're going to hear some of the new material before we let you go, of course. The new record is called Native Invader. And we want to talk about that new record. Before we move on to the new record, since you did revisit something from Under the Pink for us, 1994, if you could just kind of go back in time for us and just kind of get in that mind space of what was the music industry like at that time for you when you made that record?
Well, there were a lot of exciting bands and artists at the time that were being nurtured by the labels. And there was sort of a break in the commercial push. That's always going to be there. But if you study the landscape of that time, there was a real burst of writing from, again, like I said, bands and solo artists. And that was an exciting time to be making music and playing music. And I guess it wasn't such a push for the commercial writers being pushed on artists. And this is not, I'm not having a go at the commercial artists, but a lot of times the labels, I think, are nurturing entertainers who look very good, and they do, and they dance well, and they're entertainers, and that is a skill set, but they're not necessarily writers. And so then they pull in the writers to write the songs that set the pop industry where it is. So you don't have as many singer-songwriters or singer-songwriting bands getting signed as I feel that there were when that Seattle movement was happening in 94.
We've got Tori Amos and live in the studios here at The Current. You are out in support of Native Invader, the new one, and it is I think ultimately it's a hopeful record, but it's also got a lot of pain, and it points to, I think, the division in our country, the division inside of our own heads. Well, there's sort of unprecedented times that we live in right now, but you didn't initially set out to make this kind of a record. You were going to kind of look back up the family tree, right?
That's right. I went to the Smoky Mountains to trace my mother's father's people, and they were part Eastern Cherokee Nation and part European immigrant. And so, yes, there are flavors of that on the record, but it really changed once I was in Florida after the election. I was there for the election, but many, many weeks after I was there. And a lot was going on, of course, people falling out with each other, friends falling out, as we all know that story. But that story started to influence the record. And then my mother had a stroke. So she was under attack, and the correlation was that Lady Liberty seemed to be under attack. And therefore, the record it became a sonic tsunami, really. The songs came hurtling at me very quickly.
From the way that you're describing all of the places you were drawing inspiration, like this could have been a triple album. I mean, how did you focus it, into one record?
Well, some stories can last 4 hours, and people can be captivated by that. I've written double albums before, and it just seemed as if this wanted to be told in a specific way.
We're talking with Tori Amos. The new record is Native Invader, and it would be great to hear one of those new songs from the record, and we'll talk some more coming up in a few minutes. This song right here is called Reindeer King, and can you give us a little setup before you get into the song?
Well, inspiration from this came from many different stories, from teenagers dealing with what is their future going to be like, the fear of that, coming out of the shock of the Paris Accord being dropped from our leaders. And also, I think, what some of the teenagers are dealing with, all the issues that they're having to deal with from comments on social media, and also what Mary was dealing with, which is being trapped. So she can't express herself like she used to, although she's there. The stroke has left her paralyzed and unable to speak.
And you're speaking of your mother here.
Yes.
Well, let's hear the song Reindeer King live on The Current.
Tori Amos in the studios of The Current. That song is called Reindeer King. It's off the new release Native Invader. Obviously, there are a lot of social aspects that come into the songs you wrote and some very personal ones, but a big part of it is a plea for nature. And part of the inspiration for the record, as you said, came from your visit to the North Carolina Smoky Mountains. Tell me about the Smoky Mountains.
Stories, song lines, there in the rocks, in the trees, ancient. Some that we can't remember anymore, but they're there because they weren't written down. They've been passed down. And also a way, I think, of storytelling. And that was very much my grandfather. He was a storyteller. Honestly, he could make getting butter from the local country shop better than a drama that you find on TV today.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that you spent a lot of time listening to the music of Frank Zappa during the course of this, but also references to Carl Sagan, who I mean, you know, we are all made of star stuff, and that's one of the elements of this record.
That's right. With all the painful discussion and how words have been used with the idea of immigration, when you think about all our European ancestors were immigrants, very recently, when you look at the history of Europe and the history of the world. And so hearing Carl Sagan say, we're all made of star stuff, really was a moment that stopped me in my tracks and completely made sense. A human way of looking at where we're all really from. And it was a beautiful thought, because it made me realize that the separation and the segregation of humans from each other, that's not where he was. And so he's such a way shower, and boy, oh boy, wouldn't it be great if he were here and if Frank Zappa were here and they could do something together. I heard Frank Zappa speaking, and they reminded me very much of each other as far as consciousness and concerns. They were being expressed differently, but I was first drawn into Zappa because of the interviews. Yes, some of the music people are asking me to play some of the fun stuff, but some of his genius work, it's very complex for me to take in, so I'm having to really sit with it and learn it because he was such a masterful musician.
Possibility of a Frank Zappa cover then, perhaps, at some point?
What do you think? Yes.
Yeah?
I think so. It's got to happen before the end. Wouldn't that be great if this change could happen because of technology and also because of where people are in their need for music that takes them on journeys that isn't just to kind of get you through the dentist office, but really help you work through things. And he was one of those people. But the industry doesn't always nurture the potential Frank Zappas. Now, they're few and far between of a genius like that. But there are talented musicians out there and songwriters that aren't getting that nurturing because the labels don't know that there's a need for it. So when there's a demand from the public because they say, okay, we love our pop artists, but, come on, we need a little bit more meat on the bones for content. Then the labels might start nurturing that, and I think that's what we need to do, yeah.
The Current, Oake and Riley in the morning in the studio with Tori Amos, and the new record is Native Invader, and we are going to hear one more song before we let Tori go. Tori, you're the first artist that at least I've been in studio since the Me Too movement. And I wanted to get your perspective on that social media movement. What was your reaction to the hashtag Me Too and women telling their stories about things that have happened to them in their personal life, but in the industry as well?
Well, RAIN, the organization, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, told us that the level of calling has been the most that it has had in a very long time. And so I think it's having a huge impact across the board in all areas of work. Men are talking about this as well. Some men have also been attacked at work, and sometimes it's subtle and such in a way that they believe no one will believe them also. So I think it's about joining forces and making sure that we make a change. This is a watershed moment, if we want it to be. It could somehow lose steam in about 9 months' time, or it could just be, we need to put protocols in place, and we'll have some pervs. There are always going to be pervs, men and women, that will be powerful and in powerful positions, but there will be consequences if they act on that inappropriate predatory behavior. And that's what we have to put in place are the protocols. You can't change what's in someone's mind, but what you can put in place are their consequences if someone acts on those.
Tori Amos, Native Invader is the new record. You are on the road, just kicking off your North American tour. And before we get to our final song here, do you still enjoy touring?
Love it.
Yeah?
I'm a road dog. Rough. Love it.
It's been your life.
It's my life, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are audiences responding to your new material?
Well, it's been really warm and receptive. They're asking me some requests that are quite challenging. They're doing the mashups now. So they want to pair something with something, and that's when it's a good challenge. You say, okay, let me see. I don't know if I can do it that night. Sometimes I'll get to it maybe by Chicago.
Tori Amos in the studio. Well, we want to say thank you so much for coming by. It's always great to have you in our studio and again, sitting at that piano.
Thank you for having me.
Also, Tori's engineer, Marcel Van Limbeek, our studio engineer, Michael DeMarc, Anna Reed, our producer, photo and video by Nate Ryan, and thanks to the Charles H. Clay Charitable Trust for its support of the Currents in-studio sessions. So another song from Native Invader. This one is called Breakaway. And again, if you could help us set this song up for our audience.
This song is about people being pulled apart, and you don't know how you got there.
No, I don't expect you to forgive me this. Siding with the soldiers who say we cannot win the day. A theater of war, the fray in a conflict's now array. Their intent, division till there is no side to take. You feel betrayed. I feel played by our so-called friends, not the friends we should have made. So when the story ends and the stage goes down,